Tonight, you open your eyes and discover you're no longer in your own world, but in the quiet, crooked dawn of the Middle Ages. You wake to the soft rustling of straw beneath you, the scent of wood smoke, and a draft so committed to its craft that it somehow breezes through 3 layers of wool as if they were decorative suggestions rather than clothing. A pale, sleepy gray light seeps through a wooden shutter that wasn't fully closed last night. At least, you assume it's night's fault. You definitely didn't close it because you definitely weren't here yesterday. You sit up slowly, because sitting up quickly feels like the kind of decision your future self might resent. The air is cool, the floor uneven beneath your bare feet, and somewhere outside a rooster gives its opinion on your waking schedule with the confidence of a motivational speaker who has never heard the word snooze. For a moment, you simply breathe. You're in a single-room cottage with low beams, rough walls, and a hearth that's burned down to quiet embers. It looks exactly like something from a medieval manuscript, minus the marginal doodles of rabbits stabbing knights. At least, hopefully minus that. This is the Middle Ages. No memory, no warning, no tutorial pop-up. And yes, you probably won't make it through this day. But before the panic has a chance to stretch its legs, a soft voice in your mind reminds you to like and subscribe, as if the universe itself is gently nudging you. And if you're awake enough to share, comment your location and local time below. Medieval villagers won't know what you mean, but I will. Now, let's ease into tonight's journey. You stand, feeling the uneven floorboards groan with ancient opinion. A single table sits by the wall, carved from wood that has seen enough history to retire. It holds a clay cup, a loaf of bread that looks like it was baked shortly after the fall of Rome, and a knife so dull it feels like a metaphor for your current situation. You hear muffled voices outside. You step toward the door, ducking instinctively, because ceilings were clearly designed for smaller people with smaller dreams, and push it open. The village appears with a soft morning haze rising from the earth, as if the world is stretching after a long sleep. Chickens wander. Dogs bark at absolutely nothing. Smoke drifts lazily from tilted chimneys. The houses are a mismatched collection of timber, wattle, and daub architecture held together more by faith than mathematical integrity. As you walk down the narrow path, someone nods at you. In the Middle Ages, people don't smile often, so the nod is basically the local version of a warm hug. This nod gives you just enough encouragement to keep going, despite not knowing where going is. You pass a woman carrying a bundle of herbs. She smells faintly of sage and a hint of don't ask questions about my remedies. And you remember that one major historical fact of this era is that herbal medicine was the backbone of everyday healthcare. Not always effective, but definitely enthusiastic. She gives you a curious glance, as if trying to determine whether you belong here. Historians still debate whether medieval people were suspicious of strangers or simply too busy to care. But this woman seems willing to give you the benefit of the doubt. You keep walking. A cart creaks by, pulled by an ox with the calm wisdom of someone who has accepted all things in life except speed. Then you notice something odd. A goose staring at you with the air of someone planning a duel. You quickly decide you don't have the medieval experience necessary for goose combat and step politely aside. The morning unfolds softly. You take in the sounds. Hammer striking metal at the forge, women chatting while fetching water, the distant thud of someone chopping firewood with impressive aggression. You're beginning to settle into the rhythm of the village when an older man approaches, his cloak patched, his beard heroic. He studies you with mild curiosity before saying something in an accent that feels familiar yet unintelligible, like a cousin of English that got left on the stove too long. You attempt to respond. Something vaguely English-like comes out of your mouth. He squints. You squint. The two of you share a moment of linguistic uncertainty so profound that it should probably be preserved in a museum. But he pats your arm kindly and points toward a well-worn path leading to the marketplace. You nod and head that way, noticing how the village begins to wake fully, stretching its medieval limbs beneath a sun filtered through soft clouds. And as you walk, a strange calm settles over you. Despite everything, despite the utter impossibility of this moment, it feels peaceful, ancient, soft, like a morning carved out of gentle time. At the edge of the village, a child waves a stick around like a sword, declaring victory over invisible foes. This is your obscure fact of the day. Medieval children loved reenacting battles, especially ones they'd only heard about secondhand from adults who exaggerated enthusiastically. You smile. You keep walking. The world around you unfolds like a tapestry, woven with dust, dawn, and the feeling that you've stepped into history that's been quietly waiting for you. You follow the path from the village square into a marketplace that hums with slow, early morning life. Nothing rushes here, not even time. If modern life feels like a sprint, medieval life is more of a leisurely shuffle in shoes that don't quite fit, and you feel yourself adjusting to that rhythm with surprising ease. A row of wooden stalls lines the center, each shaded by cloth awnings that flap gently in the breeze like flags signaling, "We open when we feel like it." The merchants look half awake but committed, eyes weary, hands busy, voices soft. No one here is trying to upsell you a warranty plan. Honestly, that alone is worth the time travel. You walk between stalls of onions, turnips, herbs, pottery, wool, and what might be cheese but also might be a geological artifact. The air carries hints of baked bread, damp soil, sheep, and a suggestion of someone is cooking something hearty but unidentifiable. A woman selling eggs greets you with the kind of warmth usually reserved for old friends or preferred customers. She pushes a basket toward you, speaking in that half-English, half-ancient cousin language. You pick up an egg, nod appreciatively, then put it back as if evaluating it gave your life meaning. She beams. Simple interactions matter here. Your presence doesn't need to be explained. People assume you belong because everyone belongs somewhere. A soft breeze brushes past, carrying voices from the far side of the square. You turn to see a crowd forming around a traveling storyteller, an older man with wild gray hair and a staff decorated with feathers. His cloak is tattered but dramatic enough to suggest this might be a fashion choice rather than an accident. You drift closer as he speaks. His voice carries through the crisp air with the rhythm of a seasoned performer. He tells a tale of knights and giants, of brave deeds and questionable decision-making. The villagers listen with awe, children inching forward as if the story itself is pulling them. There is a subtle comfort in knowing that storytelling was one of medieval Europe's earliest forms of entertainment, and it still feels magical. Historians still debate whether storytellers memorized entire epics or improvised wildly depending on the crowd, but judging by this man's enthusiasm, improvisation seems likely. At your side, an elderly woman leans in and whispers something with a knowing nod. You respond with your patented medieval technique, a soft ah and a hopeful smile. She laughs. It's a warm laugh, the kind that wraps around your shoulders like a borrowed cloak. As the story ends, coins clink into the storyteller's bowl. You watch as he bows dramatically, cloak flaring behind him like a heroic curtain call. The village bell rings, a slow, uneven toll that suggests the bell ringer either overslept or simply refuses to be rushed. People begin moving, stalls adjusting, conversations restarting. You wander toward a baker's stall where fresh bread cools in the open air. The loaves look more promising than the one you found at your bedside, and the baker, flour dusting his beard, hands you a small sample. It's warm, soft, and tastes faintly of ash, but in a charming medieval way. Then comes the part you didn't expect. Someone tries to hire you. A man with a leather apron gestures to your arms, apparently deciding they are the arms of someone who could lift a barrel, carry a crate, or accidentally break something expensive. You make a vague gesture meant to convey, "I am honored but tragically incapable." But he interprets it as, "I am shy but agreeable." And so, you find yourself helping move sacks of grain across the square. Turns out the Middle Ages don't care where you came from. If you're standing near something heavy, you're automatically considered part of the workforce. As you lift the first sack, you realize it weighs roughly the same as a modern existential crisis. You wobble forward, nearly tripping over a chicken that seems offended by your existence, but with effort, and one light joke muttered under your breath about medieval workplace safety. You manage to set it down without collapsing. The man pats your shoulder approvingly. You glow with pride and also regret. After a few more trips, you're paid not with coins but with a chunk of bread and a smile so hearty it could convince a stone to feel appreciated. This might be your weird cultural tidbit of the day. Payment in food was surprisingly common, especially for casual labor. You take your reward and head toward the well at the edge of the square. You sit, sipping water from a bucket someone kindly hands you, watching as the village continues its quiet choreography. The children play again, this time chasing the same goose that threatened you earlier. It honks indignantly, wings flapping, the embodiment of medieval chaos. And suddenly you feel it, a strange, glowing thread connecting you to this place. Not through understanding or knowledge, but through presence. You're here. You're part of this morning, this market, this moment where life is simple but full. And as the breeze rustles your hair and the village settles into a gentle hum, you realize you're beginning to belong. You wake slowly, the kind of slow where the air itself feels like it's pressing you gently back towards sleep. A faint draft brushes your cheek, carrying the dusty coolness of a building that has never once worried about insulation. Somewhere nearby, a chicken makes that confused pre-morning noise chickens make when they, too, wish they were still asleep. For a moment you forget where you are. Then the smell reminds you, with smoke, damp straw, a hint of yesterday's stew that was definitely left on the hearth overnight because nobody in this world owns a fridge. And beneath it all, something earthy, like soil and wool, and the unavoidable truth that medieval hygiene was really just hope for the best. You sit up on your straw mattress. Tiny pieces of straw cling to your clothes, your hair, your dignity. You brush them off with the slow resignation of a person who knows this will keep happening every single morning until someone invents memory foam. Across the room, your host, the kindly woman who rescued you last night, kneels beside the hearth, blowing gently at the coals. Each breath glows faintly, a soft red pulse that lights the lines in her face. You notice for the first time how tired she looks. Life here isn't cruel. Exactly. It's simply non-stop. You hear the distant sound of hooves outside. Someone is traveling the dirt road in front of the house, long before the sun has made up its mind to rise. The hoofbeats are steady, almost calming. An early morning rhythm of a world without alarms, notifications, or someone asking if you've updated your password recently. The woman speaks to you without looking up. Best get yourself to the village green before the reeve comes round. You nod even though you have absolutely no idea what a reeve is. You assume it's either a person or a medieval problem you don't want to encounter before breakfast. Outside, a thin mist drapes the village like a blanket someone forgot to shake out. It hangs low, softening edges and turning the early light into silver. You start walking with the quiet shuffle of someone who hasn't had coffee, the greatest tragedy you've faced so far. As you pass the row of houses, you notice something strange. Most of the doors are made from roughly split planks, except one which has a carved symbol, a circle with a cross through it. You aren't sure if it's an early Christian mark or simply a medieval version of, "Please don't rob me." Historians still debate whether such markings were meant as protection or just a particularly optimistic homeowner's decoration. On the green, villagers gather. A few greet you with polite curiosity, the way you might say hello to a new neighbor who seems nice but also looks suspiciously clean. People in the Middle Ages notice these things. And that's when you hear it, the bell. A small iron bell ringing from the far side of the green, where the manor steward stands on a wooden platform. This is the announcement bell, the one that tells everyone the day is about to become administratively complicated. You swallow. You definitely won't make it through this day. The steward begins speaking rapidly, his voice carrying across the crowd. Taxes, field assignments, something involving sheep and someone apparently being accused of stealing one. You look around as if the villagers might silently explain the rules of this strange meeting, but they're just as uninterested as a modern crowd stuck in the world's longest staff meeting. Then comes the historical fact of the day. You nod even though you have absolutely no idea what a reeve is. You assume it's either a person or a medieval problem you don't want to encounter before breakfast. Outside, a thin mist drapes the village like a blanket someone forgot to shake out. It hangs low, softening edges and turning the early light into silver. You start walking with the quiet shuffle of someone who hasn't had coffee, the greatest tragedy you've faced so far. As you pass the row of houses, you notice something strange. Most of the doors are made from roughly split planks, except one which has a carved symbol, a circle with a cross through it. You aren't sure if it's an early Christian mark or simply a medieval version of, "Please don't rob me." Historians still debate whether such markings were meant as protection or just a particularly optimistic homeowner's decoration. On the green, villagers gather. A few greet you with polite curiosity, the way you might say hello to a new neighbor who seems nice but also looks suspiciously clean. People in the Middle Ages notice these things. And that's when you hear it, the bell. A small iron bell ringing from the far side of the green, where the manor steward stands on a wooden platform. This is the announcement bell, the one that tells everyone the day is about to become administratively complicated. You swallow. You definitely won't make it through this day. The steward begins speaking rapidly, his voice carrying across the crowd. Taxes, field assignments, something involving sheep and someone apparently being accused of stealing one. You look around as if the villagers might silently explain the rules of this strange meeting, but they're just as uninterested as a modern crowd stuck in the world's longest staff meeting. Then comes the historical fact of the day. By midday, the sun has burned away the last of the thinning mist, leaving behind a pale sky the color of worn linen. You stand beside the crooked hat man as he gestures broadly across the fields, explaining at length how to recognize the difference between good soil, bad soil, and soil that'll betray you the first chance it gets. You nod solemnly, as if this soil is planning something dramatic at any moment. Your hands ache from unfamiliar work. You're sweating gently, politely, the way medieval villagers apparently do by breakfast. Somewhere behind you, someone shouts at an ox, though the ox does not seem particularly moved. You wipe your forehead with your sleeve. It smells faintly of smoke and whatever laundry detergent was used in the year 1300, which is to say, none. The crooked hat man squints at the sky. "You keep looking at your hands," he says. "City folk always do. Hands don't matter. Work does." You appreciate his wisdom even while quietly missing hand sanitizer. A young boy runs past chasing a stick that he has clearly decided is the most important object in the universe. His laughter carries across the fields with that ageless, timeless sound children make no matter the century. You smile in spite of your aching muscles. Then you notice something else, something new. A group of women walking along the edge of the field, each carrying a woven basket. The baskets are filled with plants, greens, roots, herbs. One woman peels off from the group and approaches you. "You're the outsider," she says gently, just stating a fact. "Come, I'll show you where your feet should go." You follow her to a shaded area beneath a broad oak tree. Its branches stretch like lazy arms across the sky, offering coolness from the midday heat. She kneels in the grass and begins arranging herbs with practiced precision. "Plantain for cuts," she murmurs. "Meadowsweet for aches. And this." She holds up a tiny purple bundle. For the stubbornness of men." She smiles at your raised eyebrow. "That's not a joke," she adds. "But it counts as one of your 3-section jokes anyway." She teaches you how to identify each herb. Her hands move smoothly, confidently, hands that know land and life intimately. She explains that every household keeps at least a small stash of these plants. And then she shares the obscure cultural tidbit. Medieval folk believed meadowsweet could protect a home from bad spirits if you sprinkled it on the floor during feasts. Not necessarily because it worked, but because it smelled nicer than half the guests. You tuck that information somewhere between helpful and entertaining. A breeze stirs the oak leaves above. The light flickers warm and golden. Time slows, stretching like soft dough beneath steady hands. You breathe in the earthy scent of the herbs, the distant smoke from cooking fires, the sweetness of crushed grass. You feel present, which is rare even in your own century. The woman leans close to inspect a leaf in your palm. "Historians still debate whether this one came to our lands from traders or pilgrims," she says, handing it back. "But debate or not, it works for sore throats." You wonder for a moment at how knowledge travels, even in a world with no maps printed for the common person, no messages sent instantly across continents. Just people talking, teaching, remembering. The afternoon light shifts again. You hear the clatter of a cart in the distance. The crooked hat man waves at you to return. He's standing beside a new task, hauling bundles of harvested grain toward a wooden granary. This seems like a good time to pretend your back doesn't hurt. As you walk across the field, you pass the very path you used last night when you first arrived. Remember that low stone wall you stepped over? It's still there. This time sunlight warms its rough surface, revealing flecks of quartz that glint like tiny stars. You stop for just a moment, running your fingers across the stone. There's something comforting about places that stay put when everything else feels uncertain. By the time you rejoin the others, the day is sliding gently toward late afternoon. Shadows stretch longer, thinner. The air cools. Someone starts humming a tune, soft, repetitive, the kind of melody designed for work instead of performance. It's peaceful in that tired, satisfying way. As the sun begins its slow descent, a distant church bell rings. Not urgently, just marking time, reminding the village that the day is turning its final page. You look around the fields, the oak tree, the small houses in the distance. This world is worn and hard but somehow gentle. It moves at its own pace, asks for your presence, demands your hands, but rewards you with moments like this, quiet, golden, grounded. And as you walk back toward the village with the others, carrying a bundle of grain, you realize something. You're beginning to sink into this place, not as a visitor, but as someone who belongs here at least for now. Evening settles over the village with the softness of a wool blanket pulled over tired shoulders. The sky dims slowly, lazily, as if the sun itself is reluctant to leave. You walk toward the cluster of houses, carrying the last of the day's tools. Wooden rakes, a dull sickle, and a sense of accomplishment that feels suspiciously adult. Small cooking fires begin glowing here and there, each sending up thin ribbons of smoke that twist like gentle signals across the settlement. You smell onions frying somewhere, maybe cabbage, maybe something less identifiable but definitely edible if you're hungry enough, which you are. The crooked hat man waves goodbye without much ceremony, as though you've always been part of his daily orbit. In medieval terms, that means you're practically family. You make your way toward the house where you slept last night. A few children run past chasing each other with sticks that have been officially declared horses. One of them nearly collides with you, but children in the Middle Ages seem built from equal parts energy and luck. They always survive their own chaos. Inside the house, the woman from this morning is stirring a pot. The fire crackles beneath it with steady patience. She glances at you the way a tired but kind person looks at a friend who has survived a shared ordeal. "You made it," she murmurs. You nod solemnly. Yes, the soil was opinionated. She snorts softly at that, your first real comedic victory of the night. She hands you a wooden bowl and gestures for you to sit. The stew is warm, thick, earthy. Not particularly exciting, but comforting in the way simple things often are. Outside, the last streak of daylight fades like a long-held breath finally released. For a while, neither of you speaks. Then she says, almost casually, "Tomorrow is market day." Your spoon pauses midair. Market day. The words feel big and important, like a medieval version of Black Friday, except without the stress, commercials, or existential dread. "You should come," she continues. "See the traders. Hear the gossip. Maybe barter for a pair of shoes that actually fit you." You look down at your borrowed footwear. Sturdy but about 2 sizes off in every direction. Shoes in the Middle Ages were more like suggestions for your feet. As she begins listing things the household needs, grain, salt, maybe a small clay jug, you catch a piece of history woven into her words. Salt is precious. Not seasoning, preservation, survival. A reminder of the historical fact of the section. Salt was once so valuable that some medieval communities treated it almost like currency. You take another bite of stew, trying to imagine life where the thing you sprinkle on fries is basically treasure. A quiet moment passes. Then she adds, her voice low, "Historians still debate whether the old stones north of the market were placed by Romans or by spirits." She shrugs. "Doesn't matter. The sheep avoid that hill either way." You let the comment hang in the air, suspended between superstition and practicality. Later, as you settle onto the straw mattress, you hear soft voices outside, neighbors talking, ending their day, sharing the last threads of sunlight through conversation. The sound is soothing, like the gentle murmur of a distant river. You feel the weight of the day pulling you downward. Not unpleasantly, just naturally, the way sleep comes after real work. And as your eyes close, you think of tomorrow, market day. The noise, the colors, the smells. The chance to see the world beyond the quiet fields. You drift off with a tiny, amused thought. You probably still won't make it through the next day. Morning arrives earlier than you'd prefer, as if it's been waiting impatiently at your bedside. The woman taps your shoulder gently. Up. Market day waits for no one. You rise, your joints sounding like a medieval door hinge that definitely needs oil. You step outside into a fresh, brisk morning. The air bites a little, but in a friendly way, like a cold cat brushing against your leg. The entire village is in motion. People gather their goods, load carts, tie bundles with rough rope. A donkey brays loudly, fully committed to making the moment dramatic. You join the slow, steady flow of bodies moving toward the dirt path leading south. The landscape ahead opens wide, rolling fields, patches of forest, and the distant outline of the market settlement. Compared to your village, it looks almost bustling. As the group walks, you hear bits of chatter. Prices better be fair today. Heard a storyteller arrived last night. Someone said there's a woman selling ribbons dyed blue. Blue. The last comment is delivered with the gasp-worthy excitement reserved in your century for new tech releases. You try not to smile. The path curves through a small wooded area. Sunlight filters through the branches above, speckling the ground with shifting patches of gold. Birds chatter overhead with the frantic energy of creatures who have very strong opinions about worms. You notice something strange at the base of a tree. An old wooden carving, weathered and mossy. Two faces, back to back, etched in a style you don't recognize. When you ask the woman about it, she shrugs. Old charm. Travelers carve them to keep away fey folk. She pauses. Or thieves. Depends on who's telling the story. Obscure cultural tidbit. In some medieval regions, people carved guardian faces into trees or doors to confuse wandering spirits. You file this under the category, things that are either charming or deeply concerning depending on the time of night. Soon you hear it, noise. Real noise. Laughter, shouts, clattering carts, barking dogs. The market bursts into view. It is bigger than you imagined. A ring of wooden stalls and cloth canopies. Traders with bolts of fabric, stacks of pottery, baskets full of produce. The air smells of bread, sweat, smoke, and animals, all mixed into something strangely lively. You follow your host through the stalls. Everywhere you look, motion, color, arguments, coin clinks, jokes shouted across crowds. A man selling apples calls out, "Fresh as morning dew." A woman counters, "Stale as last week's boots." They both laugh. You suddenly like this place. As you turn a corner, you encounter the historical fact of this section. One stall displays manuscripts, rolled parchments covered in painstaking script. The trader explains that even a small text can take months to copy. Books are precious, rare, protected like treasure. You run your fingers near, but not on one scroll. Feels like touching time itself. Then a loud commotion breaks your focus. Two men argue over the price of a live goose. The goose, for its part, seems deeply invested, shouting its own opinions. The scene is absurdly entertaining and fulfills today's quota of light humor. You wander deeper into the market until you reach something unexpected. A storyteller. He stands on a small wooden box, his cloak sweeping dramatically, his voice booming like he's auditioning for the role of medieval bard with mysterious backstory. He's describing a distant kingdom, a lost prince, a dragon that may or may not be metaphorical. The crowd listens, some with wide eyes, others with skeptical smirks. Then he says something that makes a few people murmur. Historians still debate whether the stones of the northern hill were placed by ancient giants or simply shaped by time. You freeze. The same stones the woman mentioned yesterday. A shiver, small but certain, runs across your shoulders. You stay until the story ends, the man taking a deep bow before moving on to the next crowd. Hours pass. You buy nothing, but you experience everything. By the time the sun begins sinking again, your legs ache but your heart feels strangely full. The village begins the return journey. The road feels familiar now. You walk slower, absorbing the last lingering buzz of market energy. The woman smiles at you. You walked a full market day without fainting, she says. Good sign. You smile back. You're adjusting. Slowly. But you are. The sky fades into bruised purple twilight. Lanterns flicker. Voices soften. Another day ends in the Middle Ages. And somehow you've made it through. You wake to the quiet hum of a village settling into its morning rhythm, as though the entire world has been gently shaken like a snow globe and is now drifting into its natural shape. Soft light filters through the small window, light that doesn't quite fill the room, but politely occupies the corners like a well-behaved guest. The woman is already awake, preparing something that vaguely resembles breakfast. Flatbread over the fire, a bit of goat cheese, something green that might be a herb or might be a weed, but either way you're eating it. You'll help with repairs today, she says, handing you a piece of bread warm enough to steam lightly in the cool morning air. Roof needs fixing. Chickens broke a board again. You never thought chickens could commit property damage. But here we are. Outside, the world smells fresh and slightly damp, like dew on wood and leaves. A few villagers call to each other as they begin their work. You spot the crooked hat man again. He's carrying a ladder that looks one strong sigh away from collapsing. The two of you approach the house roof. The structure is mostly thatch, golden straw pressed tightly together, but part of the wooden frame beneath has been chewed, pecked, or aggressively offended by something. Chickens strut nearby, unapologetic. As you begin handing the crooked hat man bundles of straw, he begins talking, the way people talk when their hands are busy and their thoughts wander freely. Back when I was young, he says, the village held a festival every midsummer. Dancing, singing, food for all. Even the Baron would show up, bringing a massive wheel of cheese. He sighs. Now we don't get that cheese anymore. Baron keeps it for himself. You nod sympathetically. There's something timeless about people complaining that the rich keep all the good cheese. As you work, the man tells you a small cultural tidbit of this era. Some villages wove charms of herbs into their roofs for luck or protection, believing certain plants would keep storms away. He hands you a bundle of dried lavender and tells you to tuck it in with the thatch. For luck, he says, and it smells nicer than chicken. You do as he says, and the scent rises warm and comforting every time the wind passes. Repairing the roof takes hours. Your arms start feeling like you've been lifting medieval dumbbells, which are just rocks with ambition. But when the final bundle is tied down, the man claps you on the shoulder with surprising strength. Well done, he says. Roof will hold through winter now. You feel oddly proud, like you've acquired a new survival skill, even if that skill is essentially don't fall off roofs. As the afternoon sun warms the world, you walk back toward the village center. A group of children runs by again, one waving a stick decorated with feathers. You sit on a small bench and drink water from a clay jug. The day feels calm, peaceful, full of the kind of ordinary work that strangely feels grounding. Later, while gathering wood near the forest, you spot something unusual. A stone half buried beneath roots. Smooth, carved lightly with spirals. Older than the village, maybe older than memory. You touch it gently, cool, silent, a fragment of something forgotten. Villagers don't react when you ask about it. Oh, those stones, someone says, waving a hand. Left over from the old ones. Who the old ones are remains unclear. Historians still debate whether those carvings were symbols, maps, or just bored shepherds. An elderly man mutters nearby. You carry the story of that stone with you the rest of the day. By evening, the woman calls you inside. Good work today, she says. Eat, rest. Tomorrow may be quieter. You hope so. But deep down you know quiet is never guaranteed in the Middle Ages. You wake to the soft drumming of rain on the thatched roof. Gentle, steady, comforting. For the first time since you arrived in the Middle Ages, you feel almost cozy. When you step outside, the world is wrapped in silver mist. The fields blur softly at the edges. The forest breathes out gentle fog, and the air smells of wet grass, earth, and wood smoke. This is the kind of morning poets romanticize and peasants tolerate with polite resignation. Today, the woman assigns you a simple task, helping the village gather water from a nearby spring. Best to go early, she says, handing you a wooden bucket. Gets crowded later, and slippery. You walk toward the spring along a narrow path lined with dripping leaves. The bucket bumps your leg with each step like a wooden companion with opinions. The spring is small but beautiful, clear water bubbling from beneath smooth stones. Several villagers are already there, filling jugs and gossiping with the quiet enthusiasm of people who rarely get new topics. While you wait your turn, an older woman leans toward you conspiratorially. "Be careful not to take too much water," she whispers. The spring spirit notices. You blink. She nods gravely. You don't want to annoy her. This is your obscure cultural tidbit for the day. Some medieval communities believed water sources had guardian spirits, sometimes benevolent, sometimes demanding offerings. You look back at the spring. It seems harmless, very wet, very normal. You decide you will indeed not offend any spirits today. Your turn comes. You kneel, fill the bucket, feel the cold seep into your fingers. You carry the water carefully back down the path, trying not to spill. A challenge, considering medieval roads are less roads and more mud with dreams. Back at the village, people prepare for another ordinary day. You help repair a fence. You gather herbs with the women. You watch a group of men argue about whether a rooster is possessed or just bad-tempered. At one point, a traveling peddler arrives with a small cart. Everyone gathers around him as though he is a celebrity who occasionally sells spoons. He opens a cloth bundle to reveal ribbons, combs, knives, herbal poultices, and one tiny polished mirror. A real medieval mirror, polished metal, barely reflective. But to the villagers it might as well be magic. You catch sight of your own face, smudged, tired, but alive. More medieval than yesterday, less confused than last week. The peddler tells stories as he sells his goods. One catches your attention. In the ruins beyond the southern woods, he says, there are markings no one can read. Some say they belonged to a vanished tribe. Others say giants wrote them. Someone scoffs. Giants don't exist. The peddler shrugs. Historians still debate. You smile slightly. Of course they do. As the afternoon drifts toward evening, you walk down a familiar street. Muddy, uneven, lined with small homes. The rain has stopped, leaving the world fresh and shining. A child hands you a small woven charm made from reeds. "For luck," she says. You tuck it into your belt. At dinner, the woman tells you tomorrow might involve a journey to a neighboring village. Only a short walk, she promises, which in medieval terms could mean anything from 15 minutes to a heroic quest requiring lunch breaks. Later, lying on the straw mattress, you listen to the night sounds. Rain dripping from eaves, a distant dog barking, the quiet breath of people settling into sleep. You feel the rhythm of this world now, its closeness, its simplicity, its challenges, its unexpected beauty. Another day ends, and again, somehow you've survived it. Morning arrives not with drama, but with the quiet insistence of sunlight slipping through the small window, landing right across your eyes like it has a personal grudge. You blink awake and sit up slowly, as though trying not to startle the century you've accidentally landed in. The woman, your unofficial medieval mentor, ties her hair back while handing you a small cloth bundle. "Food for the road," she says. "We're walking to the next village." You glance outside. The mist is low, hanging between the houses like a shy guest who hasn't decided whether to leave or stay. A few roosters crow, but in that weirdly delayed pattern they do where no one is sure who's supposed to go first. You follow her onto the path. The day feels cool, gentle. A breeze passes through the grass like someone trailing their fingers across it. Birds chatter, possibly gossiping about the two humans walking nowhere in particular. The path curves past the field where you helped last week. Remember that fence you fixed? Still holding. Mostly. One side leans a little, but you tell yourself it's a stylistic choice. As you walk, the woman talks lightly about the neighboring village. Nothing dramatic, just notes about the people there, the small market, the priest who gives overly long sermons, and the baker whose bread is so hard it could double as a defensive weapon. After an hour or so, the path narrows and disappears into a stretch of quiet woodland. Sunlight breaks through the leaves in shifting patterns, and your footsteps soften on the mossy ground. The woman pauses near a fallen log and gestures to a cluster of strange mushrooms. "Don't touch those," she says. "They make goats walk in circles." This is your obscure medieval tidbit of the day. Villagers believed certain mushrooms could confuse livestock spirits or twist their sense of direction, so people avoided them for fear of catching the same effect. You step around them like they're tiny landmines of dizziness. A little farther on, the trees thin, and you reach the neighboring village, a cluster of cottages around a small open square. Smoke rises from their chimneys in thin, wandering threads that disappear into the morning air. You and the woman walk into a small market area where 3 people are selling various items. Onions, wool, and something that might be apples or might be lumps pretending to be apples. You help carry some items back to her relative's home. Everything feels familiar now, the layout, the routines. Medieval villages are like siblings in the same family. Slightly different, but unmistakably related. Inside the house, an older man, her brother, sits carving a wooden spoon. His hands move with a slow, practiced rhythm, as though carving is less a task and more a conversation with the wood. He looks up at you. "You're the one who repaired the roof," he says. "Good work. Roofs determine a family's luck." The woman rolls her eyes, but you store that line away anyway. Medieval advice has a strange habit of sounding like fortune cookie wisdom. The man tells you a bit of local lore while you help sort wool. "Long ago," he says, "this village was home to a healer who claimed she could cure fevers by singing into a bowl of water. Some believed her. Some didn't." He shrugs. Historians still debate whether she was gifted or simply very persuasive. You smile. There's something comforting about knowing people have always disagreed about everything. When noon comes, the woman's family serves a simple meal. Vegetable stew, bread that tries its best to be soft, and a tiny piece of cheese that is treated with reverence, like an artifact. After lunch, you carry back a bucket of herbs collected from the market. On the path home, you notice the forest feels different than before. Quiet, like it's listening. A soft breeze moves the branches. Somewhere, a bird sings a melody too complicated to be coincidence. You reach your village by late afternoon. Smoke curls from chimneys. Children play in the mud. Someone curses loudly at a stubborn goat. Feels for better or worse like home. As you settle in for the evening, the woman tells you, "You're adjusting well." Most travelers get overwhelmed. You don't correct her. You don't explain. What would you even say? This century is just a little different than the brochure? Instead, you nod, and when night falls, you rest easily beneath a roof you helped secure, hearing the soft whisper of wind passing through the thatch. You made it through another day. Barely, but you made it. You wake before sunrise to a faint knock on the door. The woman opens it, and outside stands a man wrapped in a cloak, holding a lantern shaped like a small iron cage. "Need help?" he murmurs. "Cow's stuck." There are few sentences more medieval than that. You slip on your shoes and follow them into the pre-dawn chill. The world is tinted blue, the color of thoughts that haven't woken yet. Mist curls around your ankles as you walk, cold enough to feel like someone forgot to heat the outside. The cow in question stands near a muddy ditch, looking deeply offended by its own predicament. It's trapped by one leg in a tangle of roots. Its patience appears to have expired 30 minutes ago. The villagers gather. They discuss solutions. They argue briefly about ropes. One man suggests singing to it. Another recommends bribing it with turnips. Medieval animal rescue strategies are eclectic. Eventually, the group uses a simple lever system, wooden planks wedged under the trapped leg, to lift the animal enough for it to pull free. The cow shakes itself, stares at everyone like they owe it an apology, then wanders off. "You did well," the man says to you, as though you personally negotiated with the cow. "You're becoming useful." You choose to take that as a compliment. As the morning brightens, you walk through the village square and see workers preparing for a small seasonal gathering, an informal festival marking the shift from planting to growing. Colorful ribbons sway in the breeze, tied to poles and branches. Someone hangs dried flowers along a fence. A group of boys practices a clumsy circle dance that looks more like controlled falling. You help set up tables, carrying planks and hammering wooden pegs. One man tells you that medieval celebrations were a vital break from labor, even during difficult times. "There's always something to mark," he says. "Seasons, harvests, births, saints' days, even good weather. If you don't celebrate the small things, the year eats you alive." A very medieval version of treat yourself. He also shares your weird cultural tidbit of the day. Some villages used to predict the quality of the upcoming harvest by watching how smoke drifted from the cook fires during festival week. "If it rises straight," he says, "the season will be kind." The smoke rises sideways the entire morning, but no one seems eager to interpret that. As the sun climbs higher, music begins. Pipes and small drums. Families gather. The smell of roasting onions and fresh bread drifts through the air. A woman sets out a pot of something that might be stew or might be a boiling mystery. You watch people dance in simple circles, their feet tapping the dirt in a rhythm older than language. A little girl hands you a ribbon and insists you tie it somewhere, so the day doesn't lose its color. You tie it around your wrist. She approves. Later in the afternoon, a village elder tells a story to the children. A tale about a fox who stole a farmer's boots and became the world's first traveling merchant. The story grows stranger each minute, but no one questions it. Historians still debate whether that fox was meant to be symbolic. The elder adds, as if expecting peer review. You sit on a log nearby, quietly eating bread while taking in the scene. The festival feels small, humble, a little chaotic, but deeply human. People laugh easily. Children chase each other. Music drifts like smoke. At sunset, the sky turns gold. Lamps are lit. The air grows cool. People begin walking back to their homes, the day's joy lingering like a smile that refuses to fade. As you return to the woman's house, she glances at you and says, "You handled today well." even the cow. You nod, tired but peaceful. The night settles. You lie on the straw mattress, ribbons still around your wrist, and close your eyes. And for a moment the Middle Ages feels almost gentle. Dawn arrives softly, like someone gently pulling back the curtain on the day. You wake to the faint crackle of the hearth as the woman stirs the embers back to life. The room smells of warm ash and dried herbs, comforting, in a slightly smoky way. Breakfast is simple. A bowl of warm porridge with a drizzle of honey so thin it immediately retreats into the grains. Still, it's soothing in that I have accepted my medieval fate sort of way. After you eat, the woman hands you a small wooden basket. We're gathering plants today, she says. The good kind, not the confusing, goat-bewildering kind. The air outside is cool with the faint smell of wet leaves. You follow her along a narrow path that winds behind the village, where the land slopes into a long meadow bordered by trees. The meadow looks like someone spilled a basket of wildflowers across it. Pinks, whites, tiny yellows, all nodding gently to the breeze. Bees hover lazily, moving with the confidence of creatures who know the world depends on them. The woman kneels and begins picking small white flowers. Yarrow, she explains, stops bleeding, helps fevers, also keeps away bad spirits, or so my grandmother said. You pick some too, trying to imitate her technique, though yours end up slightly crushed. She pretends not to notice. You move deeper into the meadow, collecting various herbs, mint, chamomile, plantain leaves. She speaks as she works, offering small pieces of herbal lore passed down through generations. If you place chamomile under your pillow, she says, it brings calm dreams. You briefly consider stuffing your entire pillow with it. After a while, you reach the edge of the forest, where the ground becomes softer and the air cooler. A crow watches you from a branch above, silent but judgmental. The woman pauses beside a thick patch of nettles. Useful, she says, but painful, like most things in life. You offer to help cut them. She hands you gloves made of thick, slightly stiff leather. The gloves are clearly older than you, maybe older than the village itself. As you collect the nettles, she tells you your medieval tidbit of the day. People used nettles for everything: medicine, food, even cloth. Some claimed wearing nettle cloth protected you from lightning. You decide not to test that theory. Once your baskets are full, you walk back to the village. It's midday now, the sun warm enough to make you squint. Smoke from cooking fires floats lazily through the air, carrying the unmistakable scent of onions being aggressively boiled. Back inside the house, she spreads the herbs across the table to dry. The small room fills with the earthy, clean smell of crushed leaves. The atmosphere is peaceful in a way modern quiet never quite achieves. The older man, the spoon carver, stops by with a new piece of village news. A traveler arrived this morning, he says. Claims to know about storms. Real storms. Says one might come in the next few days. The woman raises an eyebrow. We'll see, she replies. Travelers say many things. And you, well, you know better than to doubt dramatic narrative timing. Later, as evening settles, you step outside to watch the sky. The clouds gather in soft, slow layers, as if the atmosphere itself is taking a long breath. Something is shifting. Something is approaching. But for now, the world is still gentle. You return indoors, lie down, and drift into sleep, full of herbs, meadow air, and the quiet hum of a day well spent. Rain arrives before dawn, not loudly, but insistently, like a guest who knocks until someone answers. You wake to its steady rhythm against the roof, the sound pleasant and soothing. But when the woman checks outside, her expression sharpens. "This isn't a normal rain," she murmurs. "The stream is rising fast." You step to the doorway. The village looks muted by the downpour, the ground already glossy with water. A few villagers hurry past, heading toward the lower fields. The traveler, lean, weathered, wrapped in a cloak too thin for the weather, stands near the square, speaking to a group. You go with the woman to join them. "The river upstream overflowed," he explains. "The water is moving south. It will reach here soon." His tone isn't dramatic, just factual, which somehow makes it more unsettling. Villagers begin organizing quickly. Despite the era, despite the lack of modern planning, everyone knows what to do, as though danger has its own timeless language. You join a group moving tools and supplies to higher ground. Sacks of grain, bundles of wool, precious firewood. The mud sucks at your boots, heavy and sticky. Rainwater drips down your sleeves. But the work is strangely grounding. You carry, you lift, you help. People shout instructions, pass buckets, tie spare planks to reinforce a small shed. The world narrows into simple tasks that matter more than they seem. At one point, a little boy slips in the mud. You catch his arm before he falls. He gives you a grateful look that seems far too serious for someone his age. "Thank you," he says soberly, as if you saved him from a dragon. By afternoon, the rain has grown heavier. The small stream behind the village now looks more like an impatient river. Water surges around rocks, white froth breaking over the surface. You and the woman check the boundary fence. Part of it is already leaning, threatening to collapse. "Give me a hand," she says. Together you push a beam upright while someone else secures it with rope. It's messy, slippery. The rope keeps sliding through your fingers. But you manage. You're soaked through, mud up to your knees, absolutely freezing, but oddly proud. As the sky darkens, the rain finally begins to soften. Only then do villagers retreat inside, breathless and muddy, but relieved. Back in the house, the woman hands you a cloth to dry off. "You worked hard today," she says. "Not everyone would." You sit near the fire, warmed by its crackling glow. The sound of soft rain lingers outside, no longer threatening, just part of the night. The traveler speaks quietly to the older man about weather patterns, streams, and distant valleys. The woman hangs herbs higher to keep them dry. And you, tired, sore, but strangely peaceful, lie back on your straw mattress as the firelight flickers across the wooden beams above. The danger past. The village is safe. And tomorrow will come as gently as it can. Morning arrives with a heavy silence, the kind that feels padded, as if the whole world is wrapped in damp wool. The rain has stopped, but the air still clings to your skin, cool and thick with the smell of soaked earth. You stretch, feeling the pleasant ache of yesterday's work in your arms and back. It's a medieval kind of soreness, the kind that whispers, "Congratulations, you survived manual labor without a chiropractor." Outside, the village looks washed clean. Mud still clings everywhere, but in a tidy way, like nature has finished its tantrum and now politely pretends it never happened. The woman is already up, arranging the herbs you gathered earlier. They've dried unevenly because of the storm, but she hums while sorting them, improvising small remedies from what was spared. You help tie bundles of chamomile, mint, and sage. The soft rustle of leaves is calming, almost meditative. Across the room, the older man is polishing a freshly carved spoon. He examines it like it might confess something if stared at long enough. "Storm took half the lower fence," he says without looking up. "But the fields are still good." He says it in that medieval tone that means, this could have been much worse, so we're calling it a win. Outside, villagers gather to assess the aftermath. You join them, stepping carefully through patches of mud that seem eager to steal your boots. The stream has calmed. Water still rushes through it, but now with purpose instead of panicked chaos. The sun peers through the clouds, turning puddles into tiny mirrors that wobble with light. Today is a repair day. You help fetch stones to reinforce the bank. The work is slow and steady, the sound of stones thumping into place oddly soothing. The woman weaves branches into a makeshift barrier. Others clear debris, dragging branches and uprooted grasses into piles. For lunch, a young mother offers you warm barley bread with a smear of soft cheese. You accept it with both hands like it's a priceless artifact. It tastes comforting, simple, and slightly smoky, as if the cheese went on a scenic journey before arriving on your bread. After eating, you walk with the woman to the far side of the village, where the path winds to a small ridge. From there, you can see the river valley, the fields, the scattered cottages. A thin mist drifts across the landscape, softening everything into watercolor edges. A hawk circles lazily above, probably judging your earlier attempts at lifting stones. It's quiet, the woman says, almost like the world is catching its breath. You nod, feeling the truth of it. A gentle breeze carries the scent of wet grass and distant chimney smoke. The village sounds muffled, softened by the damp air. Even the animals seem slower today, as if they've collectively agreed that productivity is overrated. As evening settles, villagers gather around small fires. Someone plays a stringed instrument, soft, repetitive notes that blend with the quiet crackling of flames. You sit with the woman, the older man, and the traveler. They share stories of old winters, long journeys, curious strangers, and rare moments of joy. You learn a strange cultural tidbit. In some regions, people believed wearing a sprig of rosemary behind the ear protected against forgetfulness, foolish decisions, and poorly baked bread. A very specific trifecta. The traveler mentions he'll move on soon, perhaps tomorrow, maybe the next day. Historians still debate how accurate old weather lore truly was, he says, staring into the fire. But storms listen to no one. You aren't sure if that's profound or just mildly ominous. Night deepens. Stars emerge slowly, shimmering between patches of cloud. Exhausted in that satisfied, quiet way, you return indoors. The room glows with soft firelight. The straw mattress feels like a luxury you've suddenly grown sentimental about. You drift off listening to distant laughter and the steady rhythm of night insects. A peaceful reminder that the world, despite everything, continues in gentle loops. The next morning, you wake to the comforting sound of everyday life. Chickens complaining, a wooden bucket thumping, someone outside coughing with theatrical determination. The storm is now a story, and the village has already moved on. The woman greets you with a bowl of warm broth. It tastes of garlic and herbs, simple, quiet flavors that say, "Welcome to another day of not dying in the Middle Ages." You sip it gratefully while she prepares supplies for a short walk. "There's a place I want to show you," she says. A place the storm might have changed. Intriguing, slightly mysterious, hopefully not involving nettles. You grab your cloak and follow her along a narrow path leading out of the village. The morning air is crisp, carrying the faint scent of damp wood and sun-warmed stones. Birds flutter in the hedges, offering chirps that sound like tiny medieval gossip sessions. The path leads into a small grove where tall trees form a soft canopy. Sunlight filters through the leaves in slow-moving patches, creating warm golden pools on the forest floor. After a while, the path opens into a clearing. You stop. She stops. Even the birds seem to pause. Because the clearing holds something unexpected. A large, flat stone, half buried, marked with faint carvings. The woman kneels beside it, brushing away soil. My grandmother called it the listening stone, she says softly. Said people came here long ago, before this village existed. The carvings are worn, almost swallowed by time. Swirling patterns, shapes you can't quite recognize. They feel ancient, older than the cottages, older than the fields, older than the idea of the village itself. Historians still debate whether stones like this were ritual places or simply markers. She adds, no one knows for certain. You trace a line of the carving with your fingertip. The stone is cool against your skin, feels calm, heavy with memory. The storm washed away enough soil to reveal more of the carvings. The woman studies them thoughtfully. Sometimes, she says, the land remembers things people forget. It's a poetic line. You want to write it down if writing weren't a high-level medieval luxury. You sit beside the stone, surrounded by the quiet rustle of leaves. The clearing feels peaceful in a way that isn't sleepy. More like it's holding a secret you're allowed to sense but not solve. After a long moment, the woman stands. We should head back, she says. Work waits. Work indeed. Back in the village, several families are mending roof tiles, weaving baskets, and preparing tools for the coming days. You help repair a loose section of the older man's workshop wall, wedging wooden slats into place. The repetitive hammering is oddly satisfying. Children run by, playing a game that involves shouting instructions and then immediately ignoring them, so basically every children's game ever invented. In the afternoon, the woman shows you how to make a simple salve from the herbs you collected. You grind leaves with a mortar, add warm fat, mix slowly until it thickens. The scent is earthy and sharp. She applies a bit to a scratch on your arm. It'll help, she says. It stings. Just a little. Just enough to remind you that medieval medicine is 50% plants and 50% optimism. As evening comes, the sky glows with orange light. Villagers gather again at small fires, but tonight the mood is lighter. Someone shares a jug of ale. Someone else tells a story about a neighbor who once tried to ride a sheep to prove a philosophical point. You laugh, quietly but genuinely. You've crossed a threshold. You're no longer the stranger who arrived drenched in confusion. You're part of the rhythm, part of the village, a thread in the quiet tapestry of their days. As night deepens, you return to the house. The fire flickers gently. The room smells faintly of rosemary and warm wood. You lie down. You breathe. And sleep pulls you in like soft river water, carrying you forward into a new medieval day. You wake before the sun, which is not as peaceful and poetic as it sounds. It's mostly just dim, very dim. The kind of dim where every object in the room looks like a slightly suspicious shadow. But the house is warm, and the fire has died down only to a soft bed of glowing embers, breathing, pulsing, as if the hearth itself is dozing. You stretch, listening to the quiet crackle of a single stubborn spark trying to rekindle itself. Outside, the village is wrapped in dawn mist, a pale gray, cool, almost silvery blanket. It hangs low, drifting between houses like a ghost who overslept and is trying to leave discreetly. The woman hands you a small wooden cup of warm cider. It helps the mornings feel less medieval, she says with a smile. You appreciate the honesty. As you sip, the older man pushes open the door with a grunt, carrying a basket of damp firewood. He nods to you in that approving but trying not to show it medieval way. Walk with me, he says after a moment. You follow him outside, the mist curling around your legs as you walk. The air is clean, cold enough to wake your lungs but gentle enough to avoid drama. The path leads toward the fields, where last night's dew glistens like tiny glass beads. We checked the ground, he says. Storm softened it. Could be sinkage. Sinkage, a fun medieval morning activity. You help him walk the perimeter of the nearest field, pressing your boot into the earth. The ground squishes underfoot. Not dangerously, but enough to leave deep prints. The older man grunts approval. This is good soil, he says. Rich, holds water well. You nod wisely, pretending you know things about soil beyond the modern instinct of don't eat it. As you walk, he tells you a small cultural tidbit. Some farmers used to bury a loaf of bread at the edge of their fields each spring, believing it would teach the ground to feed them generously. He chuckles, shaking his head. Superstition, mostly, but the birds liked it. The mist slowly lifts as the sun rises, revealing the patchwork layout of the farmland. Long strips, narrow rows, little boundaries marked by stones and low fences. It's tidy, earnest, beautiful in that humble, functional way. When you return to the village, the woman is tending to a small wound on the traveler's hand. A cut from a tool. Nothing serious, but he winces anyway. Don't be dramatic, she tells him. I've seen goats handle worse. You chuckle, and he throws you a betrayed look. By midday, the mist has burned off completely, revealing a sky painted in soft blue. The travelers passing through the village have doubled today. Two wool traders, a priest, and a young girl leading a donkey that looks absolutely done with its entire career. You help unload a few bundles of wool, lifting them carefully. Wool is surprisingly heavy, especially medieval wool that appears to hold centuries of emotional baggage. The priest blesses the village, the fields, and for some reason, the donkey. You try not to laugh when the donkey sneezes during the blessing. After lunch, simple porridge with honey, the woman invites you to help with a more delicate task, sorting herbs for winter storage. Inside the house, you sit across from her, picking leaves from stems. It's calming, repetitive, the kind of activity that makes you feel quietly efficient. You learn quickly, she says. Most people fumble for days. You shrug, pretending her praise isn't secretly the highlight of your medieval week. As you work, she shares a historical fact. People in the Middle Ages often dried herbs by hanging them from rafters, believing the rising hearth smoke preserved the spirit of the leaf. You glance at the bundles overhead, sheepish yet dignified in their little rows. Later, while the older man naps loudly, you step outside. The sun warms your face. A few children run by chasing a chicken, which seems to take the chase personally. The traveler joins you, leaning on his walking stick. You're settling in, he says. You nod, feeling it. The rhythm, the tasks, the quiet satisfaction, they're becoming familiar. Remember the first time you walked past that crooked street by the well? He asks with a grin. Still crooked. You laugh softly. You like this. You like here. Evening brings a soft gold light, flickering torches, the smell of cooking grains. The villagers gather again. Someone tells a story about a legendary baker who once made bread so hard it could have served as siege equipment. You settle near the fire, its warmth settling into your bones. Another day in the Middle Ages, and you're still here, still breathing, still learning. Quiet miracle, honestly. You sleep with a full belly and an even fuller heart. Morning comes gently, carrying the soft hush of wind brushing through thatched roofs. Today, the air smells faintly of crushed pine and damp rope, A strange combination, but you're growing used to the medieval scent palette. You rise, feeling more rested than you expected. Maybe your body is adjusting, or maybe the straw mattress has secretly won you over. You stretch your arms and think, look at me, surviving multiple days in the Middle Ages like a slightly confused champion. The woman is already awake, grinding something in a small stone mortar. What's today's mystery? You ask. Pigment, she replies. For marking cloth. You lean in. The paste is a rich, earthy red. It smells faintly of berries and something mineral. She hands you the pestle. Stir, she says. Slowly. You stir in slow, even circles. The motion becomes hypnotic, a soft, steady rhythm. You feel like you're contributing deeply to medieval society even though you're mostly just mushing berries. The older man enters, holding a small hand tool. Need help with the millstone today, he says. You strong enough? You're flattered but also suspicious of the tone. Still, you agree. The village mill sits near the stream, the one that almost carried half the town away 2 storms ago. The water wheel creaks softly as you approach, its slow turns sending ripples across the stream. The mill interior is dim but warm. Dust floats like tiny golden motes in the sunbeams slicing through wooden slats. The smell is incredible: grain, wood, and something mildly nutty you can't identify. You help lift the edge of the millstone while the older man adjusts the wooden supports beneath it. It's heavy, ridiculously heavy, the kind of weight that reminds you medieval fitness was not optional. A few villagers stop by, watching, offering unsolicited advice. Lift with your legs. No, lift with your back. Don't listen to him, he fell off a cart once. The older man grumbles at all of them. Eventually, the stone settles into place with a deep, satisfying rumble. Good, the man says. Very good. There it is again, that subtle medieval approval that feels like gold coins in the emotional bank. Afterward, you walk back toward the main road. On the way, you pass the crooked street by the well. Still crooked, possibly more crooked. You give it a small nod of respect. Just before lunch, a group of villagers gathers near the square. A merchant has arrived, his cart rattling with pottery, cloth, and small trinkets. A rare treat. You're drawn to the stall by a small carved bird. It's simple but beautiful in that earnest, slightly lopsided medieval way. You like it? The merchant asks. You nod. Made by a craftsman in the next town, he says. Some say he carves birds because he once tried actual falconry and it didn't go well. You stifle a laugh. Another cultural tidbit for your growing collection. Children crowd the pottery, fascinated by tiny glazes. The woman inspects some dried lavender bundles while the older man pretends to be unimpressed with everything. Historians still debate the exact routes merchants used in this region. The traveler says quietly beside you, the records are inconsistent. You watch the merchant pack and repack his goods with careful hands. Travel, trade, exchange, these little moments kept medieval life connected. In the afternoon, the woman takes you to help prepare a new herb drying rack. You hold wooden supports while she ties them with twine, her fingers quick and sure. She teaches you how to space the bundles so air flows properly. You'll need this skill if you ever have your own house, she says casually. Your heart does a small, surprised flip. Your own house? You, a modern accidental time traveler, owning a medieval cottage? You try not to overthink it. As the sun sets, the sky glows in streaks of pink and orange. Villagers light lanterns, their golden halos floating like small glowing moons. Someone begins playing a flute, soft, slow, gentle notes drifting over the square. You sit by the fire again, surrounded by warm faces, warm food, warm air. The traveler tells a funny story about a man who once tried to predict the future by reading the patterns of spilled ale. He was consistently wrong. You laugh long and easy. You belong here in ways you didn't expect. Each day feels more rooted, more real, more yours. The night deepens, cool and calm. You drift into sleep with the pleasant conviction that tomorrow will bring new stories. Quiet, gentle stories shaped by this village you've grown to love. You wake the next morning in that half-conscious limbo where the straw poking your shoulder feels like a metaphor for your life choices. And the first thing you register is the faint, hopeful chirping of sparrows outside the shutters. It's a pleasant sound, far nicer than the midnight pig squealing from the neighbor's yard, or the rhythmic thump of someone chopping wood before dawn. In the Middle Ages, personal boundaries are flexible. You sit up slowly, breathing in the warm bread smell drifting from somewhere downstairs. Someone is already working, which is very medieval of them, and you, an accidental time traveler, are desperately trying to blend in like a very confused piece of historical furniture. You stretch your legs, feeling the stiffness from yesterday's travels. Remember those cobblestones you walked across way back in Section 3? Your ankles certainly do. They protest, creak, and lodge a formal complaint. The room is dim, lit only by a wisp of daylight slipping through the shutters like it's sneaking in past curfew. You run your hand along the wooden wall, feeling grooves carved by time and probably boredom. The medieval carpenter who built this room might have been proud of his work, or he might have been paid in onions. You suspect onions. As you stand up, you hear distant church bells ringing, marking some canonical hour you definitely don't remember the name of. Prime? Terce? Something Latin. Let's be honest. If you lived here permanently, you'd be using the bells like a rough medieval snooze button anyway. You breathe deeply and take in the familiar stew of smells, with smoke, wool, bread, dampness. It's not unpleasant once you stop expecting Febreze to show up and fix it. Your host downstairs hums quietly as they work. It's a simple, almost chant-like melody, and if you listen closely, you can hear its repetitive structure. One of those old tunes where the lyrics are either lost to time or never existed in the first place. Musicologists still debate whether common medieval folk songs were improvised daily or passed down carefully in memory. Scholars debate a lot, really. It's one of their signature moves. You wash your face with cold water from a basin, and it shocks you awake far more efficiently than any modern caffeinated beverage. The water is so cold it should come with a disclaimer. Your hands tingle, and your eyes snap open like a startled owl's. You make your way downstairs and find a small loaf of coarse bread waiting for you. It looks like someone carved it out of a boulder, but when you break it open, it's soft enough. Your host nods politely. They seem to have accepted your presence in the way one accepts whether mildly bewildered but resigned. You're offered a bowl of pottage, today thicker than before, with what might be a vegetable or might be yesterday's vegetable. Medieval cuisine loves suspense. As you eat, your host tells you about the day's gossip. Someone in the village saw a fox near the henhouse. Someone else claims their cow stared at them with judgment. A tinker came through selling pots that dent if you look at them too hard. All thrilling news by medieval standards. After breakfast, you step out into the morning air. The village is slowly waking, like a giant creature stretching its limbs. People carry baskets. Chickens dart between legs like feathery projectiles. Children run barefoot without the slightest regard for the concept of ouch. And you? You start walking toward the market square, where a small fair has begun to take shape. As you stroll, you notice a man selling amulets supposedly blessed by a monk who may or may not exist. Each amulet promises protection against something different: evil spirits, bad dreams, goats with attitude. One particular charm claims it can keep your bread from going stale. Now that is a miracle. An obscure tidbit for you. In some medieval villages, people carved small protective faces or symbols onto door frames to keep mischievous spirits away. And those spirits were blamed for everything from spoiled milk to stubbed toes. The medieval world adored supernatural customer service. You drift through the bustling fair, letting the noise wash over you. A juggler tosses wooden balls into the air. A woman sells ribbons dyed with colors that might have taken hours, or one suspiciously cheap ingredient to make. Someone is shouting about miracle cures that sound like the early prototypes of clickbait. And you walk with all this swirling around you, comfortable in the odd familiarity you've gained. Starting to feel natural. Dangerous, but natural. 3 soft jokes emerge naturally as your mind wanders. You notice a man sharpening a sword and realize he's using the exact level of focus most modern people reserve for assembling flat-pack furniture. A sheep stares at you with a slow blink, giving you the same look someone gives when you take the last samosa without asking. A baker proudly displays a loaf so round and perfect it should probably hold public office. As midday approaches, you feel warmth settling across your shoulders. You step toward the edge of the fair, where a long dirt road stretches toward the horizon. Your journey must continue, even if your legs politely request a retirement plan. And so you walk. You follow a narrow road that winds uphill like it has ambitions to become a mountain someday. The grass is tall here, brushing lightly against your legs, and each step releases the scent of earth. Rich, grounding, and carrying the faint note of dew warmed by sunlight. The air is cooler as you climb, and the breeze feels almost modern, like it could be whispering through the window of an apartment in the early evening. But here, it carries different messages. The rustle of hidden creatures, the clink of distant metal from the smithy below, and the occasional bleating of goats with strong opinions. Eventually you reach a ridge overlooking the valley. The village spreads out beneath you. Stone roofs, thatched cottages, wavy fields, and you feel a gentle pang of unexpected affection. You didn't plan on adopting a medieval town emotionally, but here we are. A shepherd waves at you from a distance. His sheep are scattered like fluffy punctuation marks across the hillside. He approaches with a slow, practiced gait, leading the flock with a crooked staff that's been worn smooth by years of use. He greets you warmly and asks if you're heading toward the old road. You nod, though you have no actual plan except don't die historically. He seems satisfied. As he talks, he demonstrates a peculiar tradition. Shepherds in some regions used carved wooden whistles, each with a distinct pattern, to train sheep to recognize commands from far away. He plays a short tune, and the sheep respond immediately, shifting direction like a unified cloud. You marvel at the harmony. It's both impressive and slightly intimidating, like watching a well-trained dance troupe composed of wool. He offers you a small block of sharp, crumbly cheese wrapped in a cloth. It smells potent enough to be sentient, but tastes rich and comforting. Cheese in the Middle Ages is always an adventure. You thank him and continue up the path, chewing thoughtfully. The flavor lingers, mixing with the scent of pine trees ahead. It reminds you of something ancient and practical. In medieval households, cheese was often one of the few reliable food staples that didn't spoil quickly. Unless, of course, it wanted to make a dramatic point. As you walk deeper into the woodland, you're enveloped by shade. The canopy filters sunlight in soft, dappled patches that dance on the ground. You follow a faint trail marked by wagon ruts. The forest hums with quiet life, beetles shifting under fallen leaves, birds clicking and chirping in bursts. You pass a shrine along the path, a tiny wooden structure adorned with ribbons, herbs, and a crude carving of a saint. Medieval travelers often left tokens like sprigs of rosemary or bits of bread to ensure a safe journey. Some historians debate whether these practices were purely religious or partly superstitious, but you suspect the average traveler didn't care about the academic distinction. Survival took priority over theology. Several ribbons flutter in the wind. One is a faded blue, another a frayed red, and one, bright yellow, looks surprisingly fresh, like someone passed through recently. You place a small pebble near the shrine, partly out of respect, partly just in case. You continue walking, and the forest opens gradually into a clearing. Here you find the remnants of an old stone building, collapsing into moss and shadow. The walls are low and crumbled, and wildflowers burst from every gap like nature's attempt at redecorating. You step carefully across the threshold, feeling a sense of peace. This building once served as a tiny way station for travelers. A place to rest, a place to share news, a place to wonder if the stew bubbling over the fire contained ingredients you wanted to ask politely about. You imagine travelers gathered around a fire, merchants with heavy packs, pilgrims with calloused feet, farmers bringing goods to distant markets. Lives crossing paths for only a night before scattering like sparks. You sit on a fallen stone and rest for a moment. A shaft of sunlight illuminates specks of dust floating lazily in the air, moving like sleep drifting toward you. 3 gentle jokes emerge. A squirrel pauses mid-acorn berrying to glare at you, as if you've interrupted a confidential business meeting. One bird tries to sing a melody but keeps changing key, sounding like someone learning the recorder for the first time. A beetle crawls across your shoe with the swagger of someone who owns the forest's mortgage. You take a slow breath and rise, continuing down the old road. The trees thin out, and soon you reach the far side of the ridge. Below lies another stretch of countryside. Soft hills, winding streams, meadows glowing gold in the late afternoon light. The world feels vast and intimate at once. Another historical fact slips gently into place. Medieval roads often followed ancient Roman routes, and many persisted for centuries because no one had a better idea. Some parts were maintained. Others were simply tolerated, much like questionable family recipes or neighbors playing instruments badly. You follow the descent carefully. The air warms again, and you feel the comforting give of soil beneath your feet. The road curves like a slow river, leading you onward into the promise of evening. And you walk, not knowing the destination, but trusting the rhythm of the Middle Ages to carry you gently forward. You walk into the late afternoon with the warm light settling across the fields like a soft blanket. The sky stretches wide, a pale blue dome with thin wisps of clouds drifting lazily, as if even the heavens are telling you to slow down. Your steps fall into an easy rhythm, soft crunch, gentle thud, soft crunch, as the old road guides you onward. You follow a bend in the road and arrive at a modest stone bridge. It's small enough to miss if you weren't paying attention, but its arching frame has that unmistakable Roman confidence. I was built 1,000 years ago, and yes, I'm still here. You're welcome. You run your hand along its stones, feeling the coolness beneath your fingertips. The blocks fit together with uncanny precision, like a puzzle created by someone with infinite time and slightly obsessive tendencies. Below the bridge, a narrow stream flows with soft gurgles. You kneel for a moment, letting your fingers skim the surface. The water is cold, startlingly so, and you imagine medieval travelers doing the same, washing dust from their hands, refilling wooden flasks, maybe silently wondering why water was always either freezing or suspiciously warm. You follow the stream for a few minutes before rejoining the road. Birds call from the trees, trills, chirps, clicks, and occasionally one lets out a sound so strange it feels like it's testing out new material for an upcoming show. A breeze moves through the leaves with a hush, like pages turning in a giant book. Soon you spot smoke curling upward in the distance. A settlement, not a bustling town. More like a cluster of farmsteads that drifted together for safety and conversation. As you approach, you pass fields of wheat swaying in the wind. Farmers move among the stalks, their figures bending and straightening with the rhythm of centuries-old practice. One farmer waves you down, a stout woman with strong arms and a sharper gaze. She asks where you're headed, and when you give your vague traveler's answer, she nods in that medieval, "I accept your mystery and will not question it" sort of way. She presses a handful of warm peas into your palm. Fresh, sweet, a small kindness wrapped in green. She tells you that tonight, the community holds a harvest gathering, not a festival exactly, but a simple shared meal in the large barn. A moment for rest, for gratitude, for comparing vegetables, occasionally with too much enthusiasm. You're invited, she says. If your legs aren't too important to keep walking, you accept. As evening deepens, you join the group heading toward a barn lit by oil lamps. Inside, the golden glow spills warmly across wooden beams and straw-covered floors. People sit on benches arranged in long rows. Children chase each other in circles until a stern adult recites a warning that children throughout history always ignore. You take a seat near the end of a table, where the smells of roasting onions, earthy roots, and freshly churned butter fill the air. The food is simple but plentiful, thick vegetable stew, bread as round as the moon, a salted cheese that nearly winks at you with confidence. Someone begins a story about a fox who tricked a miller by pretending to be a messenger from a saint. The fox apparently had excellent comedic timing. An older man counters with a tale about a rooster who outwitted a demon by quoting scripture. Medieval animals, it seems, had surprisingly rich spiritual lives. An obscure cultural tidbit weaved lightly into the moment. Some medieval communities believed that animals could understand human speech on certain feast days, particularly around harvest or midwinter. People might even whisper their wishes into a cow's ear. Whether this worked is debatable, but the cows rarely complained. 3 soft jokes drift naturally into the warm air. A man proudly claims his turnips are the size of geese, though he refuses to provide witnesses. A little girl insists her cat can predict the weather, though the cat currently looks asleep and unimpressed. Someone swears their neighbor's goat has been giving them judgmental stares for a week straight. As laughter rises around the barn, you lean back slightly, letting the sounds wash over you like a tide, gentle, rhythmic, and real. Historians still debate the exact nature of medieval community nights. Were they religious, social, or purely practical? Perhaps, like tonight, they were everything at once. When the crowd begins to drift home, you step outside into the cool dark. Stars appear, one by one, like tiny candles being lit across the sky. You breathe deeply, letting the night settle, and you walk gently toward your resting place, carrying warmth with you. The final stretch of your medieval journey begins with the soft hush of dawn. You wake before the sun fully rises, stirred by the cool air slipping through the cracks in the wooden shutters. Outside, the sky glows faintly, pink at the edges, lavender across the peaks of clouds, gold waiting behind it all like a polite guest. You step out into the early morning and feel the dewy grass beneath your shoes. The settlement remains quiet, its people still wrapped in sleep, dreaming of chores, harvests, or goats behaving themselves for once. A few chickens wander the yard with early bird smugness. You set off along a dirt path leading toward a distant ridge. The air is crisp, clean, almost sweet. As you walk, the fields stretch beside you like great golden waves, and the soft rustle of wheat brushing against itself creates a melody older than memory. You fall into its rhythm. Further along, you discover a tiny chapel made of whitewashed stone. Its roof is thatched, its doorway crooked, its bell tower leaning slightly, as though centuries of wind have nudged it with affectionate persistence. You enter quietly. Inside, the chapel smells of wax, old wood, and dried herbs tucked into little bundles near the altar. Medieval people placed herbs there for protection or healing. Sage for wisdom, thyme for courage, and rosemary for memory. You breathe in slowly, feeling the peace of the place settle around you like soft fabric. A single candle burns in the front corner. You sit on a wooden bench worn smooth by countless hands and countless prayers. The light flickers gently, casting shadows that sway across the walls like drowsy dancers. A soft, scholarly uncertainty enters your thoughts. Historians still debate whether small chapels like this served mostly travelers, hermits, or local households. The records blur. But as you sit, the function seems obvious. They were sanctuaries of quiet in a world that rarely paused. You spend a few minutes there, breathing, resting, watching the candles slow dance. Then you rise and step back outside. The sun now crests the horizon, washing everything in a warm glow. The world looks soft-edged and waking. A rooster crows with an energy level you cannot relate to. You begin your descent toward a valley you've never seen, trusting the road the way you've learned to trust all medieval roads. Cautiously but with hope. Along the path, 3 small jokes slip into your wandering thoughts. A donkey blocks your way and refuses to move until you verbally compliment it. A crow watches you pass with the expression of a scholar judging your life choices. A cow in a nearby pasture chews grass so slowly it looks like it's philosophizing. You pass a milestone stone, chipped, moss-covered, barely legible. It marks an ancient route, its letters fading like whispers of those who walked before you. Time, you realize, is different here. Wider, slower, more deliberate, and you feel something inside you shift gently. This world, harsh, simple, beautiful, has wrapped itself around you in ways subtle and persistent. You have walked its fields, shared its meals, listened to its stories. You have become, in some small way, part of it. The breeze picks up, carrying scents of earth, grass, smoke, and distant bread. You continue down the valley path, knowing your journey here is reaching its quiet conclusion. And with that, you walk slowly now, letting each step soften, letting the world around you ease into a gentle hush. The sun rises fully, but its warmth feels mild, tender, as if it's careful not to disturb you. The path beneath your feet becomes smoother, the landscape gentler, the air warmer with every breath you take. Fields stretch wide around you, vast, open, shimmering slightly in the morning light. Nothing moves quickly here. The wind drifts softly, brushing the tops of tall grass, carrying a sound like a whisper you almost recognize. Birds glide overhead in slow, steady arcs, their wings slicing peacefully through the sky. You feel your body relax with each step, your shoulders dropping, your breath deepening. The long journey behind you settles into memory. Distant bells ringing, warm bread shared by strangers, flickering candles in small, quiet rooms. It all drifts through your mind like leaves floating across a still pond calm, unhurried, familiar now. As you walk, the world seems to expand and soften at the same time. Colors gentle, sounds mellow, air smooth. Even time feels looser, stretching outward like a calm stream finding its way. There is no urgency here, no weight, no expectation. Just the quiet sense of being. A simple, steady presence moving through a peaceful morning. And as the path carries you forward, you feel the last of your thoughts easing, the edges rounding, the noise fading until everything becomes very still. You breathe once, slowly, then again softer. The world around you settles deeper into calm, and you walk, gently, quietly, into the soft, peaceful light of the medieval morning.